Good morning, and it's a pleasure to be with you this morning. Mulligans Golfing Games has been a hot topic in our city. I get a lot of questions about this, and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to this. When Professor Martinez invited me to your class, I thought this is a great opportunity for me to lay out the history of Mulligans and the process that we're going to be going moving forward. He first asked me to introduce myself. I'm Dave Alvord. In '94, I was a student at the University of Utah. I later went on to Case Western Reserve, which is a dental school, Case School of Dental Medicine. Received my doctorate there. How I came to be mayor, I campaigned. As you can imagine, this is a picture of the parade. This is me and my sweetheart. I got the kids involved. This is a picture of my 8-year-old daughter holding a sign, "Vote for my dad." And you can see me in the background there holding a sign on the street corner. And our city code prescribes a certain size sign. Now, this is a legal question that perhaps you could explore. But when signs are individually placed, and if you have a friend that owns a crane, I've met city code by the size of the sign, but I was able to get, in essence, a much larger sign hefted by a crane. So it's good advice if you're running for office to make friends with crane owners. I did get help from the college Republicans, and they helped canvass a neighborhood one day for me. And in the city, we don't have partisan races. We don't run as Republicans or Democrats. Municipal races are nonpartisan. And so this BYU-Utah alliance was the closest thing to nonpartisanship you can get in the city. A little brief, since you've asked me to speak to Mulligans, some history on Mulligans' history. It was a privately owned golf course until about 2004. I believe the city owned it for about 20 years as a private operation. Why was it purchased? In talking to staff, there were several reasons put forth. The golf course did approach the city to see if there was interest there. They had offers on buying the golf course. One of those offers happened to be South Valley Sewer. They wanted to put a big sewer treatment plant in Mulligans. And so the owner approached the city and said, "Would you be interested in buying this golf course?" And so as I've talked to staff and as we've reviewed past meetings, there were a few arguments that have been put forward as to why Mulligans was purchased by the city. The first is to conserve open space. The second argument that I've heard put forward a lot is that it's an investment property, that Mulligans, bought for X number of dollars could be much more valuable as time goes on and as real estate prices go up. And third, it was to control how Mulligans was developed. A lot of residents didn't like the idea of a sewer treatment plant going in right there at the gateway of our city. Now, if you look at these three and ponder those, you have to kind of acknowledge that these are not compatible goals. One of those is going to have to give, unless you're saying you're conserving open space for a finite period of time, and later it will be this investment property, or later it will be developed. But each of these cannot exist indefinitely together. One of them has to give. In 2011, before I took office, the city council ordered an appraisal and found that the property had doubled in value, that it was worth $19 million. The mayor at the time made the comment, "We don't think this is enough money to sell Mulligans." So you can kind of see that this idea that it was an investment property has been planted in the seeds of the institutional knowledge of the city since the beginning. Just to give you a little understanding and orient you to where Mulligans sits in the city, this yellow piece is Mulligans. This is the Jordan River LDS Temple, and this is the Jordan River that runs through there. The dark green and the light green, the city owns the light green. The dark green are conservation easements. In this dark green area, we have a migratory bird refuge. That's an area where the birds lay eggs and they return. Birds have a memory of where they've come from. And so that occurs here on the east side of the river. On the west side, we have this large development that you can see I'm sorry, not development, we have a golf course. You can see there's development on this side of the golf course, there's development on this side of the golf course. But the city has actually been recognized for preservation of green space. If any of you have the opportunity to walk any of our trails, you'll see that there is a very good job done to preserving the green space in that area. In fact, I have a picture of that. This is one of our fishing ponds. And when you walk this trail, you don't know you're in the city. The trees are high, and it's a green belt along the Jordan River. This isn't the river. This is a pond that's derived from the river. Your professor asked me to talk about who the characters are in play, so I thought I would first list who I've heard from as mayor and as the city council, who we've heard from. The first group that's been the most vocal has been the Save Mulligans group. They are a private group, a grassroots organization, many of them who have homes near the golf course, who have put up signs and have really got the community interested in this topic. And so that's one group, and by the way, that you can infer from their name, they're interested in maintaining Mulligans as is. There's city council members that I've heard from that are interested in economic development. We'll go into this a little bit more in a few minutes, but the city council is very interested that Mulligans be an investment property and that it bring in commercial revenue, tax revenue. Developers would love to have the opportunity to develop Mulligans or to add some buildings. It's what they do for a living, and so we've heard from them. And since we bought the property 10 years ago, our economic development director says that he's gotten a lot of calls, a lot of interest in developing Mulligans by developers. There are constitutional conservatives. I actually list myself among them that do not believe that government should be in the business of golf. We think that if the private sector can do it, and if it's established that the private sector can do something, we ought to allow the private sector to fulfill that role. And I have heard a few people that have felt that the city ought not to be in the golf business, whether it's profitable or not. We've heard from golfers around the valley. A lot of people have used Mulligans as a place to hit balls. We have a heated driving range, which is one of the best in the state. And so the golfers would hate to see Mulligans go. And we've also heard from environmental groups that have concern for the migratory birds and that have a concern for open space. Now, I've listed, these are all of the folks we've heard from, and as you can tell, there's some clashing of interests. Not everybody's going to get what they want in this property. The one group that I have not yet heard from is the taxpayers themselves. Now, I have heard from a few individual taxpayers. I've heard from Save Mulligans, constitutional conservatives. But what do the 60,000 members at large believe? And it's interesting, as you run a city, a lot of times the number that attend are no larger than this group, and yet we represent a city of 60,000. And so I thought I'd show this story that kind of lets you know what's going to be happening next.
Future of a South Jordan golf course and game complex now lies in the hands of you, the public. The City Council voted 4-1 to poll residents on what they want to see happen to Mulligans. Good for Utah's Nadia Crow has more on the decision that comes with the $20,000 price tag.
After months of discussion, the South Jordan City Council approved a plan that would let the city's residents weigh in on what to do with Mulligans, improve the complex or get rid of it. Batting cages, miniature golf and a driving range and a practice green. All things you can do at Mulligans Golf and Game Complex, largely due to city subsidies to pay for the purchase price, water and other expenses.
If you were to look at it as a business, it would be running in the red when you can consider all the things that they have to pay for.
You'll see signs that say Save Mulligans in yards of homeowners who live nearby. They've been pushing to keep Mulligans where it is and open. And it's that kind of public support that swayed some council members to vote yes to public polling and focus groups and online surveys.
We've received a lot of feedback from members of the community. What the City Council wants to make sure is that they're getting a complete picture of what residents throughout the community would like to see happen.
This topic has already garnished a lot of conversation, and we want you to weigh in on our social media accounts on Facebook and Twitter at ABC4 Utah. Reporting from South Jordan, Nadia Crow, Good for Utah.
And the city says they will do focus groups and online surveys, but they haven't set a timeline for that yet.
All right, so we thought we'd put this in legal terms that maybe this group would understand. We have green space preservation versus economic prosperity, or economic opportunity. Now, I should probably back up. You noticed in the report that we talked about Mulligans. If it were run like a business is losing money, in about 6 years, the bond will be paid off on Mulligans, and Mulligans will most likely run at a profit. And so to get really stuck on this argument as to whether or not the golf course is profitable, I think it's a bit of a moot point. It's going to be profitable in a few years. What I think the bigger picture issues are these two things. You've got green space preservation, and then you've got economic opportunity. The numbers are going to ebb and flow with the golf course, but I think these are at the heart of the question that our residents are going to be facing. And how many recognize this kind of, I guess this is a legal way you file a court hearing? Is that what it is, Mr. Rogers? Green space preservation. You know, you think about a city, if you had a city that was nothing but parks, it would be impossible to live there. It would be too expensive for any of us to afford the taxes there. And conversely, if you had a city that had no parks, it wouldn't be livable, and you probably would elect not to live there, regardless of the tax rate. And so green space preservation is a valid argument that's made by those that are wanting to preserve Mulligans than those that want to save Mulligans. That is a valid argument, and there has to be consideration there. Economic opportunity, I just thought I would show this group what numbers we're looking at. This is River Park. This is exactly across from, it's south of Mulligans Golfing Games. We used the numbers that we've been seeing in our tax revenue from River Park to help us inform what the opportunity is for Mulligans. And by the way, this development isn't necessarily what would go in Mulligans. This is just an example of what opportunities are there. You probably can't see these numbers. I don't know if you're interested, but it basically shows the property taxes that could be collected over 30 years and the sales taxes that could be collected over 30 years. And so on a 30-year estimate of what Mulligans is really worth in potential is you've got your property taxes, sales tax, and then the actual value of the land. These are all just estimates. It all depends on what's developed and how intense. But you can see a $108 million potential benefit to the city. And so it's not insignificant, and it's something worth considering. To this economic argument, a tax base must be strong to keep taxes low. Commercial properties happen to bring a lot of revenue to cities and school districts. Residential properties generally break even. Now, if you have more intense residential properties, they bring more taxes. If they're lower density, single-family homes on large lots, they don't generally bring a lot of tax revenue to cities. So the commercial properties contribute to the robust tax base. Part of that is they pay 100% of their tax value. On a home, you pay 55% of the value of your home multiplied by the tax rate. That's what you pay on your home. But a commercial property pays 100% of tax value, and that's really what drove the numbers you saw previously, the millions of dollars that it could do for the city. One option in all of this, you can see these are competing forces, green space versus economic development. One option that's been presented and studied is an option of compromise, where you do a hybrid. You develop half, you keep the other half green space. A few months ago, we had an interest of Hale Center Theater coming to our city, and we partnered with Boyer Company, who came up with this little rendition. This was the concept, was to have green space near the river and to develop some of it surrounding the theater. And I just bring this to you today to kind of show you what we had in mind. Here on the left is a putt-putt, a mini golf, and then here's a carousel. And then we had this walkway where there would be restaurants lining all the way with the theater at the end. And this was going to be a hybrid of green space and development. That's what the council intended for this property. Unfortunately, Hale chose to leave South Jordan, and they no longer have interest in our city. But that was the spirit of what we were trying to accomplish when we did have Hale. Another option, and this is all subject to the survey, is to improve the golf course. If we're worried about Mulligans operating in the red, then you improve it. You increase fees and you increase the value. As pictured here is a new clubhouse. That would have to be bonded for or financed through some means, but we could make it more of a golf destination and try to improve our numbers there. And by the way, there is another option that could be explored if it were to remain golf, and that's the privatization of the golf course. If we make it private, constitutional conservatives like myself, the people that want green space, a lot of people will be satisfied in that scenario, except for maybe those that want more affordable golf. As you can tell, this isn't a situation that everyone is going to be perfectly happy, but that is one option. And if the survey comes back that they want to keep it golf, I think we need to do a second survey to find out whether or not they're willing to let the golf course go private. The law, I figured, and I'm not an attorney, I'm a dentist, but the reason that we are in control of this property is, first, we are the owners of the property. Second, we are the legal, when I say we, I mean the city council, we are the legal authority to make land use decisions. Right now, the golf course is zoned agricultural, and we could vote to rezone it commercial. We could vote to rezone it residential. We could make a special zone. We could call it a golf zone. That discretion lies in the hands of the city council. And yet, we answer to the people. And so we did inquire as to whether or not we could put this item on an official state ballot, a county ballot. We found out legally that's not possible. And that's why we've pursued Y2. That's why we've engaged Y2 Analytics to do our scientific polling. Just to get back, so I'll tell you the plan. The plan to try to reconcile all of this is to first do focus groups and scientific surveys that will ask the question generally, are you okay with golf? Do you want it preserved open space? Or would you be open to a compromise? We're going to ask high-level questions of our residents. And then out of that poll will come some data. If it looks like the majority want to keep it golf, then we will have to ask refining questions. Do you want it to be a private golf course? Do you want it to be improved? Do you want it left alone? Or do you want some other hybrid of the two? If the survey comes back and it's more mixed, people are open to various options, then we'll probably have a plan A, B, C, and D that will show various development intensities. One of them may be, like I mentioned earlier, 50% developed, 50% open space. Another one may be 70% open space, 30% developed. But we'll have these options placed in front of the people, and they'll have another survey. Do you choose option A, B, C, or D? And we're going to have public meetings where we're going to actually show renderings of each of these options to the public. The very last step in this plan is that the city council respects the will of the majority and votes accordingly. They're not bound to, but it's politically expedient to. I'll put it that way. And so the council has the right to vote out of principle. They could vote differently than this public process. But in consultation with the council, we have made a commitment with one another that we are going to go through this public process with the intent of following the will of the people. In other words, I wouldn't expect a vote to come out of this that's very different from what the public input reveals. My predictions. Stock prices in companies that manufacture pitchforks and torches will go through the roof. Invest now. And here's The Simpsons, an angry mob fun run. As you can tell, there are a lot of competing interests on a topic like this, and that's why I've probably been invited here today, is because it's not an easy one. It's a tough one for the city to face. I don't know if I've ever done an angry mob fun run, but it looks fun, doesn't it? My final thought, and then I'll open it up to questions, is I believe this will be a fascinating exercise in representative government. I think observers can learn a lot from this experience. I think your class can learn a lot. I thought I would conclude by reading a quote from Thomas Jefferson, and he was speaking about the case for making a form of elected representative government. He said, if we treat the people as subjects, we govern them, and not they themselves, they will abhor us as masters and break off from us in defiance. But if we treat them as fellow citizens, they will have a just share in their own government. They will love us and pride themselves in a union with us. That's all I have for you. I thank you, and I'll now open it up for questions.